welcome to the Advanced Placement World History Podcast. This is episode 22, Internal Troubles and External Threats. This podcast will examine Qing Dynasty China, the Ottoman Empire, and Japan in the 19th century, and we'll look at how these empires reacted to the emergence of the West as the world's superpower. I'm going to be discussing both internal upheaval that happened in each of these empires, as well as the external threats posed by, among other things, Western imperialism. So, looking at Europe in the 19th century, or the 1800s, really the moment where Europe is exerting itself as the dominant power in the world. For most world history, Europe has been weaker than the Islamic world, weaker than China, weaker than India. And then in the 17th and 18th century, of this period where the Eurasian powers are roughly equal with each other. And now in the time period 1750 to 1914, Europe clearly moves ahead as the world's major power. Economically, Europe established itself as the center of the world. In Unit 3, we looked at how Europe essentially pushed its way into the Indian Ocean trade and established ports at really all the key points in and around the Indian Ocean basin. Europeans colonized America. Europeans built a trade network that stretched across the Atlantic and, for the first time, connected really the entire world into one large global trading network. The Industrial Revolution, which began at Great Britain, is also partly responsible for the global expansion in Europe in the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution created a need for more resources, and once these resources ran out at home, the logical place to look was abroad, to colonies. Industrialization also required more markets to sell all the stuff that was being made in Europe. So both the desire for more raw materials and the desire for new markets to sell things pushed Europe to really establish colonies all over the world. Europe's new position of global superpower completely changed the way Europeans perceived themselves vis-a-vis other people in the world. For a long time before the Industrial Revolution, Europeans defined outsiders usually in religious terms. Outsiders were heathens, whereas Europeans were Christians. It's important to remember, for a long time, Europeans were technologically inferior to the large civilizations, but as Christians, they viewed themselves as being religiously superior. But this didn't hold them back from adopting many of the technologies of the more advanced societies, China, India, the Islamic world, and Europeans historically held these civilizations, or at least their technology, in high regard, especially China. But with the Industrial Revolution, things start to change. This sense of religious superiority is replaced by more secular, broad sense of intellectual superiority. Europeans fashioned themselves smarter, harder working, better looking, and European opinion of other cultures dropped drastically. European people no longer revered Chinese culture. They were more likely to mock it. And in the age of European science and enlightenment, many Europeans tried to prove their racial superiority through science, albeit fake science. Among these fake scientists, you had phrenologists and craniologists who measured the shape and size of the human skull and came up with the conclusion that Europeans were more evolved than other people. Biologists in the 19th century who classified plants and animals also applied this to races and created a hierarchy of races with white Westerners at the top of the hierarchy. These new ideas of racial superiority, which would turn out to be false, had a big influence on the way Europeans viewed themselves and viewed their own global expansion. So for Europeans, it was this idea that European expansion and domination of the globe was inevitable. It was the natural order of things. Within Europe, there were differing views of what European expansion should look like. Some Europeans held the view that as Europeans, they had a duty or responsibility to civilize what they termed inferior races. Civilization might mean bringing Christianity. It could mean bringing European systems of government. It could mean bringing industrialization and a market economy and trying to instill a Western work ethic to indigenous people. Essentially, bringing the benefits of a European lifestyle to people all over the world, while at the same time suppressing local customs that went against European ways of thinking. A more sinister view was held by social Darwinists who applied Charles Darwin's concept of survival of the fittest to human beings. And the idea was that eventually weaker races would be displaced, and the natural evolution of the human species would be for the entire world to become Western European in both race and culture. So, hopefully, this just gives you some insight into some of European views that made imperialism and Western aggression seem like natural and progressive, and gives you a bit of the European mindset coming into the age of European imperialism of the 19th century. So, Europe was gearing up to confront the other world superpowers, and none of these confrontations were more important than Europe's encounter with China.